What's up guys, Saf here on SuperSaf Speaks, and welcome to the very first episode of the brand new podcast featuring myself, your host, SuperSaf, and we of course also have a co-host which can now be revealed. So let me pass it over to you, Thunder.
Hey, Saf, thanks for having me on. I am excited to be here, even though the Colonel was pretty sad about not showing up today.
Well, some of you guys, I'm sure most of the audience probably know you as Colonel Singala, the dictator. I just thought right now, somebody that's coming onto this podcast for the first time that doesn't have the context will probably be wondering, what are these guys talking about? But anyway, most of my audience will know Thunder E as Colonel Singala, the dictator, who will hopefully be making an appearance on the podcast at some point in the future.
Yes, as you know, he loves sassy things and, shiny things. So there's a lot coming out.
All right. So today we are going to be doing an introduction to the podcast, why we're doing it, and a bit of background. But then we've got a few interesting topics that we're going to be talking about too. The first and the main topic will be starting a YouTube channel in 2021. Something that a lot of people are obviously wondering. We're also going to be talking about Touch ID versus Face ID. This has been a big topic of discussion lately. We will then go on to something a little bit interesting, and that is SuperSaf on OnlyFans. Because we had an email from OnlyFans asking me to join, so that's going to be something fun to talk about. And finally, we'll also be talking about something quite emotional, the death of Flash, Adobe Flash Player. So lots to talk about. Let's initially start off with this podcast itself. So it's been something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And we've spoken about this. I've told you about this many times, haven't I?
Oh, yes. We've talked about this quite a bit. I mean, let's just say a couple of years now, probably.
Yeah. But the thing was putting it together and things like that. And I actually wanted to do something face-to-face personally, but obviously with the current pandemic, that's not something that can happen easily. So we were having a chat last week, and then I was just like, hey, E, would you like to be my co-host on the show? And he was like, sure. And thank you, E, for joining in.
Well, actually, it was sure with one speculation that at least the Colonel had to show up once. It wasn't my call. It was him. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, absolutely happy for the Colonel to be here, and I'm sure the audience will be too. In terms of what we'll be discussing in this podcast, so of course we will be covering tech, but as well as that, there's lots that me and E talk about on a regular basis. Social media is something that we live and breathe every single day, and it's something that is something that a lot of people are also interested in. So I think we'll be able to bring quite unique insights, being content creators ourselves who use these platforms in a slightly different way to what a lot of regular users will be using. But also there's lots that I want to talk about in general that doesn't make it onto the main channel. The main channel is kind of very focused on tech, and you can't steer away too much from that thanks to the YouTube algorithm. So I think this podcast will kind of allow us to be a bit more open and discuss a lot of these wider topics that we don't normally get a chance to discuss out in a video and audio form actually.
Yeah, no, it's very true, and I think it'd be a good opportunity to just, kind of delve in more into some of these different aspects, whether it be, devices or even just the social commentary that we go through day to day, where we can explain more things and, you guys can chime in and hear, our own more intrinsic take on things.
Totally. And one of the things that a few people are obviously going to be asking will be why the name SuperSaf Speaks, right? So I'll give you a bit of background to this. So I was initially thinking about, naming it something around tech, but then that kind of makes it too specific to tech, whereas we are going to be talking about a few things. And then it was just like, okay, Saf Speaks. But then I had a chat with E, and E was he said, let's just keep it on brand. You know, we've got the SuperSaf style brand with the sunglasses, and hopefully more things coming soon. We'll talk about that in a future episode. But this way, it kind of goes with the alliteration. You've got SuperSaf style, and then you've got SuperSaf speaks. So it will be me speaking my mind and bouncing off E.
Yeah, very true. And I guess we should move on to the very first topic.
Yep, and that is starting a YouTube channel in 2021. I've got a lot. I've got a lot to say about this because being somebody who's been a YouTuber for 9 years, it's going to be coming to, right? You, E, have been a YouTuber for how long? How long have you been making YouTube videos? Quite longer than me, I would say.
Yeah, since 2009. 2009.
2000.
So,
12 years, so longer than me, right?
Yeah, it's going to be 12 years, yeah.
Now with me, I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with YouTube, to be honest. So I love YouTube because if it wasn't for YouTube, we wouldn't be here. My motto in life has always been make your own opportunities, right? Don't wait around for something to come. And I think YouTube is the perfect place for that. I mean, you could say the same for a lot of the other social media platforms, but I think YouTube in particular, because of how it's set up and how you can grow and how you can also monetize your content very quickly compared to other platforms. And, you know, that's something that I absolutely love about YouTube. We didn't come from backgrounds where we were like, okay, we're just gonna, you know, had any sort of experience here. We just decided to pick up cameras and start to make content. Now that's one side of it. But the other side of it, I mean, if you asked me a few years ago, I'd be like, yeah, YouTube, go YouTube. Everybody should be a YouTuber. But the algorithm is definitely a struggle and it's quite challenging. So now I'm a lot more realistic when I give people advice about starting a YouTube channel, because it's not as easy as it may seem for a lot of people. You see a lot of these content creators, you know, come up from nothing and it's just like, yeah, I can do that, which is great. But I think you do have to be quite realistic based on the challenges and purely the competition. So in 2013, I believe, I had 8,000 subscribers, right? And I got invited to do a talk at a university about YouTube. And I was like, hey, my first talk and everything. And I remember I did some research back then. And I think it was around 100 hours of YouTube video was being uploaded every single minute, right? Mm-hmm. That number is now 500 hours of YouTube video being uploaded every single minute. So it's never been more competitive either.
Yeah, no, I mean, I actually thought that number would be higher, but I definitely agree with you with that mindset. So around 2013, maybe 2014, if you asked me then, I said it was late to become, not a YouTuber. Somebody asked me a question around that time about being a tech YouTuber, very specific. And I said it was late to be a YouTuber, though since then we've seen a lot of people come into the game. And I definitely agree with you that now it's very, very tricky. The reason I say this is I joined this new social network. It's still an invite only, called Clubhouse. It's a mixture of like having your own Reddit style rooms, but in an audio format where you have speakers and people can listen. And it's a great experience. And there are a bunch of rooms that have opened up about YouTubers and YouTube help, and, you know, other YouTubers are trying to give people tips. And you know, I joined a couple of rooms and I listened first, just listened to the agony of people who are starting YouTube channels, and it's very, very painful. It's one of those where, you know, a lot of things are not straightforward in understanding the analytics to even just what to do, like best practices as well. So you've always got this thing where a lot of YouTubers, especially who are starting now, go through a lot of just a very painful process of trying to just do the best practices to move forward. So, I mean,
it's challenging.
It's tough. Yeah.
I guess what I would say is I still think it's a great opportunity, and, you know, my advice would be do it, right? Because you're only going to get better. None of us have, if you speak to any successful YouTuber, right? We know quite a few friends, and whenever we speak to them, they all hated their first videos, and that's the same thing's going to happen with yourself as well. You will likely not like your first videos. The great thing right now is there's much less in terms of setup that you need to be able to create videos, because now we've got smartphone cameras, which is so much better. I remember that my channel actually started with DSLR cameras because that's what I was really into. Now smartphone cameras are so good. You can actually start recording video, pretty good video, with a minimal budget. So I would say go ahead, try it out, but be careful about what you're doing it for. If you're doing it to become rich or become famous, I think these are the wrong reasons to become a YouTuber. What you should make YouTube videos for is what you're passionate about. What do you want to share with the world, right? What's already not there. The other mistake that I see a lot of YouTubers doing, especially in the tech world, they're like, they want to be the next MKBHD, right? And Marquez is already there and he's already killing it. So why do we need another, why do we need another Marquez Brownlee, right? Now it's all well and good being inspired, but he's already killing the game. Why is somebody going to watch you over what he's doing, right? So I think it's important to kind of look at that, and fair enough, be inspired by your favorite creators, but create content that's firstly going to be yourself. It's going to be unique and it's going to be your personality, but also something that's bringing value to the audience. Why are people going to watch your videos? And one of the quotes that I've always stuck by is, don't try to make people watch your videos. Make videos that people want to watch, right? And that's really how you will grow an audience, because sure, you can make videos whatever you want, but if you really want to gain an audience, you need to be providing value to your viewers.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the good pieces of advice you gave me when we were trying to restructure things on my channel a couple of years ago, where, we switched to more gaming videos on the channel. And it's stuff I like to do anyway, but understanding that my audience really loves that stuff. And, when you start looking at the analytics of your channel, as you build one, you realize that there are certain things people gravitate to on your channel. Now, it may not be the thing you initially started with. I think what people need to understand is you can always pivot and move. And if it's something you're creating, you can mix in even the things that don't work well, but just some of the topics in there. So I do gaming, for instance, but I like talking about other things in devices. So I still will mention the camera. Just because I'm doing gaming doesn't mean I can't say that the device doesn't have a good camera and stuff like that.
Totally.
So I think it's understanding that pivot nature and going, you know what, I love to do this, but if people are not really gravitating to this, but they like this other thing more, then you know what, let's see what that is, and let's see how we can grow that aspect out, as opposed to just trying to force one lane. All the way.
Totally. Always adapt. This is something that I have conversations with everybody. It's like, it's very easy to get stuck in the rabbit hole and just keep doing the same thing. It's always important, I think, every few months, kind of take a step back, look at the content that you've created. So if you started up and you've created 10 videos over 3 months, have a look at those 10 videos. Okay, what are people watching? What are people not watching? What do I need to change? What do I need to adapt? And it's very important to keep doing that over and over, because once you're in the zone, it's very difficult to kind of see it from the outside. And it's also important having friends. So like, myself and E, we speak very regularly, and I'll see something that he does, and I'll be like, no, dude, we can't upload that, right? No, we need to do something different. And in the same way, E will see something and I'll be like, I'll run an idea past him and it'll be like, yeah, I'm not too sure about this. Maybe you need to change it this way. So I think it's also important to find others who are in a similar field to you and trying to bounce off each other as well. That's very important too.
True. And don't forget to reach out. I mean, it may seem daunting to reach out to other creators that you like. And when I mean reach out, I mean, you can ask for advice and questions and say, look, I would like to know, what's a good routine or setup or things like that. And a lot of us will reach out and answer and say, hey, guys, okay, look, I know you're starting off. Just try this. We looked at some of the stuff you've done. I tend to do that a lot with different creators because I understand how hard it is. I don't have a film background. I used to be a microbiologist, so completely different view, and I understand it's difficult. So reaching out and asking some very poignant questions, you definitely will get feedback from a lot of creators, just helping you kind of just take those first steps.
So yeah, guys. So basically, what Thunder is saying is, if you want any advice, his inbox is open. No, no, but like really, I think this will be in terms of reaching out to creators. I think this will be a really good topic for a future episode where we can kind of deep dive on the best ways to do that. Because what you don't want to come across as is because my inbox is full all the time with people who may as well just say, "I want your subscribers," right? Because that. I would prefer that you went in straight and just asked for that because they don't watch your videos. It's purely just like a one-way street. So I think there's quite there's the right way to ask for advice and try to get a collaboration, and there's a wrong way, and I think that's going to be a really good topic to also look at in a future episode.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely think that there are some very poignant ways, but yeah, we need a whole podcast for that one.
That's going to be a big one. But yeah, so starting a YouTube channel, I would say, yeah, go ahead and do it. Experience is what will make you better. And it might be something that you're not into. I mean, like, I've seen a lot of people who want to start a YouTube channel. They'll try it for a few months and they'll be like, actually, you know what, this isn't for me. And just realizing that as well, and then moving on to different types of content creation, whether that be short form content creation, like some, on TikTok or somewhere else. That's still an option, but until you don't try it, you won't know.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's now move on to our next topic: Touch ID versus Face ID. Now, I actually did a poll on Twitter about this as well. Let's do our votes first. So, me, I think everybody knows this. I prefer Touch ID to Face ID. What about yourself, E?
I mean, I prefer an in-display fingerprint sensor. Yeah, I like Touch ID, of course.
Okay, so here's the thing, right? So I did a poll on Twitter and on Instagram as well, and we're looking at roughly 65% of people said they prefer Touch ID over Face ID, and we had like, I don't know, 10, 15,000 votes, which I think is a decent sample. Would that have been different had I asked that question before the pandemic?
Yes, I think so. I think it would have skewed differently before the pandemic, because if you kind of look at when Apple introduced Face ID and how a lot of Apple users kind of they embraced it fully. A lot of people said, well, it's cool. I can always raise it up. And some of us had talked about how great it was, but having a fingerprint sensor still is just a simple, straightforward. I don't have to look. I can I can put my finger somewhere and it's good. And I think the pandemic has really stressed it. I mean, today I was out. I was doing some shooting with the iPhone, and whew, man, because you have a face mask on, like every time I put in my my number code, and I'm like, oh God, I just wish I had a fingerprint sensor. It would be so much easier.
No, I think the face mask thing really does kind of and as far as we can see for the foreseeable future, we will in some form still have to wear face masks, so I think, but for me, even before that, Touch ID was always more convenient, right? And the example that I always gave, which I'm not sure everybody can relate to, but I'm somebody who uses my phone a lot in bed, right? So before I go to sleep, I'd probably listen to a podcast or just kind of browse through, catch up with messages and things that I haven't done during the day. So that's what I'll do. Now, sometimes I'll kind of like, have my face halfway in the pillow and I'm trying to like unlock my phone and it's not unlocking and I'm like, oh, after like, or say for instance, I wake up in the middle of the night and I just want to quickly check something, whatever. I have to, and it's just like, if it's Touch ID, I can just press it and I'm there, right? And this is one of the reasons why I don't like optical in-display fingerprint scanners, such as what we've got on the OnePlus, because those actually shine a bright light to be able to scan your finger, and they actually blind you. So you're like, well, what was that? And you just kind of like, it just wakes you up completely. Whereas, Touch ID, whereas if it's an ultrasonic in-display fingerprint scanner, or if it's a physical fingerprint scanner, it's actually much, it's much less intrusive, shall we say. The thing is, what I've been saying since the iPhone 10 release with Face ID is, what would be super cool would be if Apple had the Apple logo on the back of the iPhone as a fingerprint scanner, potentially in addition to Face ID, right? And I think that would be such a good solution. I don't think they're going to do that, and one of those reasons maybe because they've got the whole MagSafe thing in the back. But I do think because of the pandemic and everything, I think iPhone 13, they will be looking at certain solutions in addition to Face ID, I would think, though, because your face is more secure than your fingerprint. I can't remember the exact figures, but as far as I know, it's much more difficult to spoof your face. And I'm not talking, I'm talking when you've got a proper Face ID scanner like you have on the iPhone, which projects like 30,000 dots on your face or something like that, right? Now, because of the whole pandemic and this whole change that we've had, I think Apple will potentially, I mean, I've heard some rumors of an in-display fingerprint scanner, but also maybe the side power button, right? Because if we look at the
iPad, right?
Yeah, so the iPad Air, the new iPad Air, they've now incorporated Touch ID into a much smaller surface area compared to what we've had previously. So I think that would be, again, another absolutely fine solution in addition to Face ID. So if you are in the supermarket, you've got a mask on, it just makes it that much easier.
Now, you just mentioned, there's rumors they might be an in-display, fingerprint sensor. The question here is, one, Apple can easily develop their own, but would you take advantage of their newfound friendship with Qualcomm and maybe utilize the ultrasonic, especially because it's very discreet? I'm just saying, I'm putting that out there. Because that technology can be sold separately. It doesn't have to be tied to a Qualcomm chipset.
I wonder because 3D Sonic Max still hasn't come, right, to any flagship, has it? Or actually any device?
It should be coming this year to the Galaxy because they said the area is increased. That is basically that's 3D Sonic Max. It's just that
it's a larger area.
Samsung
it allows two fingerprints.
Samsung was the only one who picked it up because of the initial issues with the first launch of 3.
Will it be on the S21 though?
If it's a larger area, then yes.
Okay, because I just did a leaks and rumors video today, and I didn't find any reports around that. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll find out next week.
I mean, we'll find out when we get our hands on the device and play with it. We'll see if it's it's a larger square area.
We'll see. We'll let you know soon. Right, let's get on to the juicy part of the podcast. Am I joining OnlyFans? Well, let's give you some context behind this first, right? So, for those of you guys who don't know, E also manages a lot of my partnerships. So he has an email address which my partnerships come into. And last week, this popped into the inbox.
So it was quite funny because I woke up in the morning and I usually go through emails, and I saw the email that said hello Saf, and he goes, I'm contacting you on behalf of OnlyFans. So I was like, excuse me, what? I kind of paused. I thought it was dreamy. And it says, we would love to have you as a creator on the platform. Which is good. So I sent it over to Saf and I was like, it's our time to shine.
He's the money man. He just sees dollar signs. That's what he sees. All of the rest of it, the part about my mom actually killing me, that all goes out the window. It's just like money. But obviously, let's put the email up on screen. And E, do you wanna read out parts of it?
Yeah. So it says, I'm contacting you on behalf of OnlyFans. Would love to have you as a creator on our platform. OnlyFans is a great place for you to monetize off your tech reviews, advice, and other content you may be already creating. Our platform is designed to make money for any type of content creator by providing the ability to charge fans a monthly subscription fee for their content. I also have the ability to feature and promote the account to up to about 80 million users on the site. So I didn't even know they had 80 million users, which is
that's quite a big user base. So, of course, they are not expecting me to post anything, what's the word?
R-rated.
R-rated, right? So, obviously, as soon as I posted that screenshot after E sent it to me, you know, that tweet, just everybody was having a good laugh about it, and they were like, you know, had a few people saying that will sub. So shout out to you guys who would sub if I was there. Now, here's the thing. There's a couple of things here, right? So firstly, OnlyFans is not necessarily a platform for R-rated content, right? It can be for anything, as they've said in the email. So they've basically approached me in the sense that, hey, your tech reviews, you know, they've probably seen content that I've been posting on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, etc. And they're like, you could post exclusive content. So this is more like of a Patreon, I think, which more people are familiar with, right? Where it's exclusive content for your followers. They pay a monthly fee, and they get content that they wouldn't see on your other platforms, right? So it's essentially exclusive content. However, the trend on OnlyFans obviously has been R-rated content, which has gained the reputation and the association when anybody mentions OnlyFans. I mean, the fact that I used the hashtag OnlyFans on TikTok and my video got taken down. So I uploaded an unboxing of the Samsung Galaxy S20 FE Fan Edition. And one of the things that I joke about a little bit on my video and things like that is that I just, you know, deliberately call it the OnlyFans edition, just having a play on the Fan Edition, right?
Yeah.
And as soon as I used that hashtag, boom, TikTok took it down. And that, again, re-emphasizes that association that for most people, when they think OnlyFans, they think R-rated.
Yeah, no, it's true. But it's also interesting, the dynamic, because I remember we talked about this and we said, you know, as a creator also, you sometimes have to look at different avenues, right, of where your content should go. But what I also find quite interesting is how, you know, the idea of OnlyFans, and so almost like a specific paid subscription for your fans, is it's very foreign to us here. But, you know, when you look at places like China, where, you know, they have very different social networks. The only social network we share is TikTok with China and the US. There's a lot of social networks or sites like that. I was listening to, again, this is going back to Clubhouse, which is the new, you know, social network I'm on. I was listening to a room where somebody was talking about live streaming in China, how they have very specialized live streams that are paid by fans. And they had one streamer who had 60 million fans live at one point in time, which is huge. I mean, if I only just had 1 million, I would be happy. Actually, if I had 500 people, it would be fine. But the idea that, you know, people are paying for that kind of access over there as opposed to here is a very interesting take. I don't think it would necessarily work within the Western world. I think it's a very different mindset altogether. But it does play an interesting role to see what are people willing to accept and what things will transfer over there. You know, whether it's the pandemic that made more R-rated content go to OnlyFans, or maybe it was just, you know, the point in time, or is it something where the Western audience might be, you know, used to the fact that, okay, look, I want my creators to give me specialized content like a Netflix or a Hulu, where I don't know if OnlyFans can pivot that way, where you go, okay, look, you get the kind of content you want from this, as opposed to you're getting R-rated content. It's a very tricky road, I think.
I think they are trying to kind of break away from that because, you know, not putting all your eggs in one basket. And, you know, yes, they've gained a reputation for that, but I think they're trying to reach out to content creators, because I'm assuming they've not only reached out to myself, they've probably reached out to a few others, where it's just like, hey, how do we diversify the content on here, right? Because this is a platform for exclusive content for your fans, for your followers. To answer the question, will I be joining? The answer is still no, even if it is for tech content. And I'll give you my
answer is not at this time. Not at this time.
Oh, not at this time. Okay, businessman is coming there. He's seeing dollar signs in the future. No, but the reason why I would not join is because personally, and this is no criticism to anybody else, personally for me, I do not feel comfortable asking my followers for money in exchange for content. And that's because I'm fortunate enough to make a good living from the content that I post anyway, through sponsorships and partnerships that we have. And I think that's something that not all content creators are fortunate enough to have. Being in the space of tech, it is a very good space to be in, and we're very blessed that a lot of brands like to work with us, and they see the value of working with us, with our engaged and very targeted audience. And this is something that we are obviously very fortunate of. There's lots of other creators who maybe cannot get partnerships and sponsorships as easily as we do, and for them I think platforms like Patreon, potentially OnlyFans, are very, very good ways for them to pay the bills, keep making the content that they're making. Because I think a lot of people there's a thin line between doing something you love and work, right? So a lot of people, the quote that's thrown around a lot is, if you do something you love, you will not work a day in your life, right? Now that's a tricky slope, because a lot of times you find creators just doing lots and lots of work for free, essentially, right? And that also is not fair. So if they are creating content that's bringing value to somebody, and if your followers and your fans want to support that content because they want that exclusive content, then I think that's absolutely fine. But for me personally, at this time anyway, it's not something that I would be looking into.
No, I do agree. I think it is a slippery slope. There's one creator I knew way back. He used to make a lot of headphone videos, a lot of high-end headphones, which is very niche. And he started a Patreon, but his Patreon was very different. And I actually liked his idea. He said this was a fund for users to pick and choose which headphones you should buy and then review.
Okay.
Because he was reviewing like $1,000 headphones, $2,000 systems, things like that were quite pricey for any creator to buy. And I kind of liked that approach. That was a very nice approach too, where he said, look, guys, you want me to cover this? It's expensive. And I think it was actually from one of his fans who suggested it. Like, look, and people were like, great. And so there was like a monthly poll of people saying, hey, okay, how about this month? Can we cover this new headset? It's $3,000. He's like, sure, no problem. Because it was more like a community effort of doing things.
I like
so
that.
there are different ways to do it. And that I think makes sense. And I think most people shouldn't just think of it as being, I'm earning money or I'm charging my users, because it's a very tricky slope to charge people for content like that, in a sense. And I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's something that you have to weigh properly.
Oh, totally, yeah. And, there is also the element of then being under pressure to give value to your audience, who are actually now not only giving you their time and their attention, but they're also giving you hard-earned cash that they have, right? And then it kind of puts, I think it also puts, because right now I'm pretty flexible with what I want to create. Obviously, I create content which I know my followers want to see, because I know that's what's going to get watched. I know that's what's going to get picked up in the YouTube algorithm. And I also kind of mix that with things that I like and I enjoy, such as fun thumbnails, which we'll cover in a lot of detail in a future episode for sure. But one of the things that I think that would be quite challenging, and it'd be interesting to actually speak to somebody potentially in a future episode who has a Patreon or paid subscription that they use, and why they use it and how it works. Because for me, kind of like one of the thoughts I would have would be the pressure of actually delivering content to people who have now, paid for that content as well.
No, it's very true. I think those are the kind of things that come into play. So at least for me, on my point, I'll say, I do like what OnlyFans is trying to do to expand. I think anyone who's thinking of that should also understand that, with anything, there are benefits and disadvantages. Just like being on YouTube, there are disadvantages to being on YouTube as well. So you just have to weigh those things and think about. I think one thing which maybe we didn't mention earlier was, when you become a YouTuber, I think most people need to think they are more than just a YouTuber. You're a creator as a whole. and think of creating in every single social outlet that you can, because you never know. TikTok might just be your thing instead of YouTube, and
Yeah.
that might be the place where you thrive much better.
Oh yeah.
So I'll say don't rule out OnlyFans, but just wait effectively. Is my
So advice. The reason why he's saying that is because he doesn't want me to say no to OnlyFans because he sees dollar signs in the future. He's a businessman. He's a business. That's why I work with him. All right. So now moving on to our final topic of this podcast. I've actually got a bonus thing as well that I want to talk about a little bit later on. But let's talk about something that's quite close to me, and that is Adobe Flash. It's now officially dead, and it's not going to be supported on any browser. I just thought right now, actually, some of the audience probably don't even know what Adobe Flash is. They're probably too young to know what Adobe Flash is. So let me give you some background. So Adobe Flash, right? It was actually developed by a company named Macromedia back in the 2000s, or maybe even before. This was the time when the internet was very flat, shall we say, right? Not dynamic, not interactive. You just had very static pages online. And then along came Flash, which allowed you to install a plugin onto one of your browsers. And this would just open up a whole range of possibilities, whether that be interactive websites, games, lots and lots of games. Also, players for video. Now we take apps and things for granted right now, but back in the early sort of 2000s and like even late 2000, not saying late 2000s, I mean like sort of 2010 time, YouTube was using the Adobe Flash Player to be able to play videos on their website. So that's how big it was, and it was supported on 99% of internet-enabled PCs at one point, right? So pretty much if you had a computer, it would have Flash pretty much pre-installed on it because of how important it was to the internet. Now, to give you some background, for myself, I actually was a Flash, 3D Flash, a Flash and 3D animator. That was kind of one of my job roles back in the day. So I was a multimedia designer, but one of my key roles, and at one point my actual job title was 3D and Flash animator, right? So I
wait, Saf, question. So does it mean you can also code as well? Are you telling us you can code?
Yeah.
All right, we need this. We need another podcast on that. But just continue.
About my coding experience. I've done JPython, HTML, JavaScript, ActionScript for Flash. But we'll talk about that in a future episode. So for myself, a few days ago, I actually tweeted on New Year's Day, marking the end of Flash. I captured a video of my online portfolio, which was a website that I created at university. And that was actually what got me my first job, by seeing my skills in 3D animation and Flash combined into a form of a website. That actually got me my first job. And I created many websites in Flash, and I was fortunate enough to actually win 3 Adobe Site of the Day awards. So my website, or a website that I had worked on and created, was featured on Adobe's page to kind of showcase great Flash design. And then
wow.
So that's something that a lot of people may not have known about. So that was kind of my background. So now, then I think it was around 2010. Flash is all good, but now the iPhone's in the game, right? And smartphones and tablets are coming in the game. Now, Android did support Flash on browsers. It didn't work really well, I'll be completely honest.
Oh, it was terrible.
Apple decided to not support Flash, and Steve Jobs actually wrote an open letter, and at the time I was very salty about it. I'm not going to lie, because I was just like, this is my livelihood. Why are you taking it away from me? But in hindsight, looking back, he was totally right. The problem was the Adobe Flash Player was made for a mouse and keyboard experience. It was made for computers, PCs, laptops. it was not made for a touch interface, right? In addition to that, it was also a battery hog for smartphones and tablets, and there were also lots of security vulnerabilities, right? And I think as soon as Apple decided not to support it on, their iPhones, which were increasing massively in popularity and just going, just absolutely blowing up, that was the start of the downfall for Adobe Flash.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's what was your experience with Flash?
So for me, I mean, I Flash always annoyed me. So
You're on the opposite side. you're glad it's dead.
So it's funny though. In the early 2000s, I used to work in a hospital, and I would, there were different, those are the early days of the internet as we know it now, where I was always into tech and I was into like, anime, movies, all that stuff. But you go to different websites, everybody had a different Flash player, and some of them just didn't work well. So, I'm trying to show a friend a video and it doesn't work. It may not work on his computer because it's not updated to the latest version of Flash. Well, there's so many complexities there. Now, when Steve Jobs came up and said, Flash has ended. Now, at that time, I was a big Apple hater. I'll admit it. So
confession time.
So for me personally, I was like, like internally, I was like, look, this is great. Flash is dead. Fine. But externally, I was like, why is Steve Jobs doing this? Come on, this is rubbish. Like Flash needs to stay. Flash is great.
Oh,
Flash is fantastic. Even though I never liked the thing in the first place. So
this is very much fanboy mentality. This is we're going to talk about fanboys in a future episode, right? But I do not like this. Just kind of like, I don't care. Just because it might be right, but just because Apple's doing it, I don't like it.
Yeah. Oh, so it was a lot of that, and since then HTML5 has done so well. Plus, Flash is just pretty much gone. And I totally forgot about it until you brought it up. And I saw your Flash site, and I was watching it. I was like, it's cool you make that, but I was also looking at it. I'm like, this thing is so janky, man. This is really janky.
Hey, don't criticize my website. That ran very smoothly, okay?
No. What I mean, what I meant was
right.
It's like compared to stuff now, Flash is janky. I mean, like it's really good.
No, but like,
I mean, you guys should check it out.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it had its time, and like the fact that it was supported on 99% of internet-enabled PCs, and the fact that YouTube, like you'd need the Flash player to be able to play videos on YouTube, essentially, right? So just how big it was. But then I also want to kind of continue the story because I did continue that tweet and I talked about some more, because when I saw that I was just like, okay, this is my job, right? This is what I do. Now I can see it going downhill, right? I can see that it's no longer going to be what it was. It's no longer going to be that 99% of coverage that it has. So I need to kind of start changing. So I started looking into HTML5 and I was doing that. But I also saw the rise of video at the time, right? So this is around 2011 and I was just like, okay, videos are becoming more and more the medium which people are using for pretty much everything, right? So I picked up a DSLR camera. I had no experience of using a DSLR camera or like shooting any proper video. And then I just started teaching myself, right? So I started taking photos. I did wedding photography for a time as well. Again, this is something that we can talk about later because that's a whole story in itself. But essentially, I started teaching myself over, a year or so, and I started, really getting into video. And that's when I started my YouTube channel, right? And my YouTube channel was about DSLR cameras because I just became fascinated about these tools and how you could just create almost movie-like videos from something that, costs less than £1,000, right? I was just so fascinated, and that's what I started doing. And then I started moving my focus from Adobe Flash and making websites to making videos and shooting photos. And one of the takeaways from this is, nothing lasts forever, and that's something I said as well, that what you have to always remember is things do change, times change, right? And the only way you can survive is if you adapt. And that's something that I'm super grateful for, that I did take that initiative and adapt and start a YouTube channel. And what now? I think it's gonna be 9 years. Yeah, 9 years since I started the YouTube channel, SuperSaf TV. And thankfully it's still going. It's still bringing in views, and the other social media platforms are thankfully again also doing well. Praise the Lord. So yeah, it's something that I think is very, very important. That's my biggest takeaway from the death of Flash, kind of looking back. And I'm a living example of somebody that's what my job was.
I wanted to add one more thing to that. Is there's something that I learned early on, where there's a saying that the older you grow, the more you're set in your ways. That's what they say a lot of people are, because you kind of notice with your parents, uncles, or anyone who is much older, maybe in their 60s or 70s and things like that. And I've always taken it that the older, like I've tried to do the opposite in my life, is the older I am, the faster I should be able to accept not just change, but fault. The reason I say just with fault is that sometimes you might think what you're doing is actually correct, and somebody else is telling you like, you know what, I don't think that works out well, or maybe you should try something else. And not that it's actually wrong at the time, it's just that they are more probably seeing the future before you are. They're seeing the gaps that you're missing. And you may not change then, but be willing to accept it and like go through the process of saying, maybe I should change and pivot. Maybe I should try something else. And that pivot doesn't have to be huge. It might just be just that much. It might be the pivot for someone who's a lawyer to go from one type of law and go slightly adjacent just because it works well for them. Or it may be like Saf going from, Adobe Flash creation to making YouTube videos, or myself being a microbiologist to now making YouTube videos. So life is one of those things that you just have to be willing to make that change and accept fault as well, because we are not perfect. That's just how I see it.
That's very true. I think your change from a microbiologist to a YouTuber in tech is more of a pivot, I would say, than mine. But no, totally agree. And this is something that I always give advice to: adapt. And it kind of goes back. This kind of nicely ties back to what we started off with the podcast on, which was starting a YouTube channel. And again, it is something that you have to adapt to the changes in the environment, the changes to the algorithm. One of the things that I've always emphasized to my fellow content creators is the importance of diversity, right? Diversity, where you can't put all your eggs in one basket, right? So creating content on other platforms as well, making sure that if one doesn't go the way you think it's gonna, at least you have something else to go on to, right? And I think that's so important. And I think that in terms of diversifying your content and the different platforms, recently I started an account on TikTok, and I got a lot of hate for that as well. And I think that will be a very interesting, maybe we can cover that in the next episode, where we can kind of deep dive into the different social media platforms and how and why you should be diversifying across those.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really important one to look at, because I've noticed a lot of people who said, hey, like, why are you on that? And why shouldn't you be there? I mean, I would honestly say be on every platform except Snapchat. That's just me.
because he's too old for Snapchat. No, I mean, again, Snapchat, that's an interesting one, because I've got so many thoughts about Snapchat as well. Again, we won't go into too much depth here, but I think the important thing to take away from the death of Adobe Flash is nothing lasts forever. So always be ready to adapt. Right now, the last thing I want to finish off on before we kind of conclude is something that I actually saw trending on Twitter today, which was keeping the box of your smartphone. Now, it was particularly around the iPhone. People are like, you should just check it out. What's the point? And others are like, you should keep it. What side are you on, E?
I'm actually on the side of keeping it. I think it helps for resale
Of
in
course.
many aspects. I also think it helps on gifting. Um, I think one thing we should realize is that we should keep good check of our devices because somebody else could easily use it and they don't need maybe all the horsepower that we are upgrading to.
Of course.
And it makes a really good way to kind of give them a whole package and say, hey, look, here's the box. And also, it's technically, I wouldn't say it's less waste, but at least you're not wasting immediately. There's some longevity to it as well.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the mix of things there. Now, I understand, some people who, of course,
Just
would want to toss it away,
toss
right?
it out.
And that's fine. But if you're not a content creator like us, where we tend to have a lot of devices, where it makes sense to toss it away, I don't see why not keeping it and making sure it doesn't end up in a landfill immediately.
Yeah, I mean, recycling point actually. But if it's a TV, then fair enough, right? TV boxes
Yeah.
take up a lot of space, right? But if it's a smartphone box, then I'd say totally keep it because, again, like as soon as you finish with that lifespan, somebody somewhere is probably gonna find some use for it. Even if it's a case of shipping it over somewhere, it's just going to be much more secure and safe in the box rather than putting it in a jiffy bag and hoping that it's going to be okay. So I think we would definitely keep it. And with my other argument here is with boxes getting much smaller now, thanks to manufacturers not including chargers, it's actually much less space that it's taking. It's taking half the space up of an older smartphone. So yeah, I mean, I guess if you live in New York and you're paying $5,000 a month rent, and for a 200 square foot apartment, then maybe you might want to throw your boxes away, right?
No,
But
no, no, not necessarily. Those boxes are used to raise the table, so it's level on that $5,000 apartment.
but yeah, I mean, I would say definitely keep your box for your smartphone. I think it will come in some sort of use in future.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it is. I think if it's a larger device, TV, stuff like that, it just takes up so much space anyway. And I think we'll see more manufacturers make boxes that are more reusable. I know Nintendo with their boxes now, they're trying to make it where you can make things for pets, you can use it for the video games, where there's some extended lifespan. Like I forget
That's an
what it's
interesting
called.
point.
I forget what it's called with the Switch, but there's a bunch of Switch games where the box is necessary. It gives you a chart on how to cut it out or shape it. You can make it into a shield or a steering wheel, and you're using it with the Joy Cons as well. And I'm like, it's great,
That
especially with a
is.
family. You can do more with it, and you can make it into like a little cat house or whatever. I mean, it's just
I
more
like that.
options.
I mean, like maybe if it was a smartphone box which kind of turns into a phone stand, right? We're onto
Yeah,
something. We
absolutely.
should maybe cut this out this because somebody's going to take that genius $1 billion idea and take away with it. But no, I mean, like, yeah, if you had something, so if any smartphone manufacturers are listening to this, I think, yeah, that would be a really good way to kind of extend the use of a box. So, of course, yeah, you're going to recycle it. And one thing I want to mention is I really like the fact that Apple, even their screen protector is made from paper. So it's recyclable, right? Well, I don't know if it's recyclable, but it's something that's
It's
going to be
recycled. Yeah,
well.
it was recycled.
You can dispose of it rather than it's gonna disintegrate or whatever the word is for it, right? Rather than using a plastic screen protector that you just peel off, right? So you still do get that satisfaction of peeling it off, except that it's paper. So I quite like that. But yeah, I do like the idea of potentially having smartphone boxes which can transform quite easily into something that's actually potentially usable, like a smartphone stand.
Yeah, that's right. We'll be collecting 50 cents per box. Thank you very
Yeah.
much in perpetuity. You know my email, guys. Thank you.
All right. I think we'll close it off on that. That was a really fun chat. I really enjoyed it. I mean, this is the kind of conversations me and E have all the time anyway. So this is
Yeah.
just in video and audio form for the rest of you guys to listen to as well. I mean, if you did enjoy it, then please do, drop a rating, leave some feedback. It would be really appreciated. Obviously, this is something that I'm quite new to. Yeah, I know you've done a few of these before, but this kind of format I think is quite new for us both to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to kind of hear your feedback. What topics you would like to hear covered in the future, and that's something that I'm very, very keen on. I want this to be a very collaborative process where the viewers and the listeners really kind of push forward what they want to hear, and based on what that is, I mean, we can do some polls and things as well, and kind of see what topics people want to hear and see covered, and then we can kind of cover those in future. So do please leave a rating, leave some feedback, and also subscribe, follow, all of that good stuff. It is SuperSaf Speaks across all platforms. I am your host, Saf, and along with your co-host.
Yes, it's Thunder E from Borderwork, so definitely check me out there.
All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. If any of you did make it all the way to the end, then thank you so much. I'll give you a virtual hug, and we will see you in the very next episode of SuperSaf Speaks. Thanks for listening.